The transplanting line is where all the action starts for finished crop production. And it starts with filling your containers. So whether you're doing flats or you're doing individual pots and shuttle trays, make sure that you're using pre-moistened media. So on the 1 to 5 scale, somewhere between a moisture level 2 and 3. You shouldn't be able to wring moisture out of your media, but there should be enough moisture in your substrate so that it's not going to start pulling moisture away from your plug or liner that's going into this container. Make sure that media is pretty much level with the top of the container and that you're getting good, uniform, loose fill. You don't want compaction, and you also don't want big chunks of sticks and other debris sticking out. Next step, dibble a hole for your young plant. You want to make sure that your dibble hole is appropriately sized for your input. So if you have, say, a 512 plug that's really small, don't dibble a massive crater in your containers. And vice versa. Don't try to take a 72 cell liner and put it in a hole that's more appropriate for a 288 cell plug. All that's going to do is create compaction, and it's going to make it harder for the young plant's roots to push out and grow out into the media. Once your containers are all dibbled up, now you can go ahead and put your young plants in. It's critical to make sure you're getting the right planting depth. Generally speaking, you want to have the top of your plug or liner media pretty much level with the top of the substrate in your flats or your pots. It's okay for it to be a little bit below, because once you water them in, media will wash over and it'll settle down a little bit over the top. But you don't want to bury your plugs. That can cause crown rot and other disease issues. It can also just cause generally slow growth and reduced plant vigor. You also don't want to have them prairie dogging out of the media like that. That can cause really rapid dry down, and it cause undue stress on the young plants, prevent them from getting well established, and ultimately you'll see the results of that downstream when you have a smaller plant than everything else in the flat. The last step on the transplanting line is watering them in. So it's best to water plants in right after you're transplanting. You don't have to water them up to container capacity, but it's important to get a little bit of moisture on there so you're not stressing young plants out before they get set down in the greenhouse. And it also helps kind of keep the young plant in place. If you're loading them on the carts and taking them out into the greenhouse, planting into a mostly dry media and then putting it on a rack causes a lot of bouncing around. So run your freshly transplanted plugs or liners through a tunnel like this to just get a little bit of moisture in that container. Once you get them set down in their final resting place in the greenhouse, you can water them up the rest of the way. Lastly, for any at-risk crops or plants that you've had pest or disease issues with in the past, remember that you can apply things like biologicals on the end of the transplant line. Just make sure that you're following all label regulations. And don't let your plants sit on racks in a head house. Head houses are dry, head houses are dark. You want them out in the greenhouse and growing strong right away.